Rachel Zegler has officially hit rock bottom. In a move that even shocked Hollywood insiders, Disney is quietly pulling Snow White from theaters and digital shelves across the country, like it never even existed. No press releases, no statements, just gone.
Hard. And it's lonely. It's very lonely. I just know that if that loneliness can exist, so can other things. And I will be everyone
who hates when I win. The winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see it.
And behind the scenes, Disney's live-action reboot machine is collapsing, billions lost, empty theaters, merch collecting dust, and at the center of it all is Rachel, spiraling in real time, breaking down on live streams, melting down in interviews, facing a harsh reality. Her career might never recover, so what went so wrong? And why is Disney pretending Snow White never happened? Let's dive in. It started with the theaters. Cinema chains were locked into contracts that required them to show Snow White on a set number of screens, but those screens were empty, even on weekends. Theater owners started pleading with Disney to pull the plug early, and many didn't wait for approval. They swapped it out for literally anything else. In some places, a 3-year-old animated movie was getting better attendance, and then one video hit the internet and lit the fuse. A fan recorded a showing of Snow White. The camera panned across the room. Every seat was empty. Not a small crowd, not a light turnout. Empty. You could count the audience on one hand. The vibe felt less like a Disney premiere and more like a school.
But despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and defects, that in every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line.
You know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her
play. No one wanted to attend, but things only got worse overseas. Lebanon didn't just cancel showtimes, they banned the movie outright. No screenings, no imports, total blackout. And while Disney was trying to pretend everything was fine, a quiet comparison was brewing, and it was brutal. Lilo and Stitch, yes, the animated movie with the blue alien, was quietly tracking to outgross Snow White's entire US run in its opening weekend. Let that sink in. This wasn't an Avengers sequel. It wasn't a billion-dollar franchise. It was Lilo with a space dog, and it crushed Snow White like it was a low-budget student film. Even the merchandise was a disaster. Disney shipped Snow White dolls, shirts, and mugs in limited batches to try to create demand. But months later, shelves are still full. Nobody wants it. They can't even give it away. And in the middle of this chaos, Rachel Zegler, the internet's punching bag. Suddenly, insiders began to leak what was happening behind the scenes, and it only made things worse for her. First, Gal Gadot. In interviews, she didn't throw Rachel under the bus, but she sure didn't defend her either. When asked about the backlash, Gal called it a misalignment at the corporate level. Translation, not
love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
I booked West Side Story a week later, though. I do have a terrible audition experience. I was actually, oddly enough, auditioning for a Broadway show.
My fault. Then came the comment that launched 1,000 rumors. When asked if she'd share more about working with Rachel, Gal said, "I'll talk about that when I feel comfortable." Just one sentence. But fans took it as confirmation that things on set were a mess, and that Gal was biting her tongue out of professionalism. Meanwhile, Rachel's other co-star, Andrew Burnap, didn't even show up to the premiere. No red carpet, no press, nothing. And the worst part, Rachel may have predicted it.
Andrew Burnap, great dude. Yeah. Wonderful, and whether or not she finds love along the way is...
In a press interview, she literally said all of Andrew's scenes could get cut. And they basically were. Imagine working on a Disney movie for months, only to have your lead co-star tell the media your role might not even make the final cut. No wonder Andrew ghosted the premiere. The vibe wasn't just awkward, it was toxic. And then came the biggest move of all. Disney quietly canceled their live-action Tangled adaptation. No trailer, no teaser, just gone. Vanished from the slate without a word. And while they didn't officially blame Snow White, the connection is clear.
A very famous Broadway musical that was having a revival, and the producers and directors were ordering lunch while I was singing.
We wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming.
Early reports had Rachel Zegler in the running to play Rapunzel, but after the fallout, Disney wasn't willing to take that risk again. This wasn't just a recasting issue, it was a strategy shift. Tangled would have needed a massive budget, a fan-pleasing campaign, and another leading role built around a star the internet had already turned against. The risk, too high, and Disney backed away. And let's be honest, a decision like that doesn't happen unless the studio believes the lead is part of the problem. This isn't just a flop, it's an industry-wide rejection. Actors are distancing themselves, directors are dodging accountability, studios are canceling future projects. And Rachel, she's still in the center of the storm, but even that wasn't the lowest point, because after all the press tours, interviews, and promises that theaters would be packed, Rachel showed up to a screening of her own movie. She walked in smiling, flowers in hand, posting selfies like it was a celebration, but the camera didn't lie. The theater was almost empty, a few people scattered across rows of silence. No energy, no buzz, just her and a sea of empty seats. It was supposed to be a flex. It became a meme.
I was scared of the original cartoon. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. Like, I'm being so serious. I watched it once, ride in Disney World, which was called Snow White's Scary Adventures. Doesn't sound like something a little kid would like. Was terrified of it. Never revisited Snow White again.
Fans reposted it with captions like Snow White and the 7 empty seats. Others joked that she brought flowers to a funeral. Some said she looked like she was hosting a press tour for a ghost town. And then came the numbers. Snow White couldn't even break $100 million in the US, even with Disney's full marketing machine behind it, even with international release. The movie was hemorrhaging money. Its IMDb score, one of the lowest for any modern Disney film. Critics and fans alike piled on. And just like that, the narrative flipped. Rachel wasn't being praised for challenging tradition.
17 years when I was doing this film.
She was being blamed for destroying it, but the final blow, that came from Minecraft. Yes, Minecraft, the live-action Minecraft movie, dropped just weeks after Snow White and instantly crushed it at the box office. No controversy, no lectures, just blocks, zombies, and Jack Black yelling into a mic. While Snow White crawled past the triple-digit mark, Minecraft soared past it in its first weekend. Suddenly, Disney's most expensive princess reboot.
Different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because, like, we cast a guy in the movie. Right. And it's one of those things that I think everyone's gonna have their assumptions about what it's actually going to be, but it's really not about.
Looked like a parody of itself, and the industry was watching. Reports started to surface that studios were now reconsidering Rachel's upcoming roles, that she might be passed over for future projects, that Disney no longer wanted her headlining any reboots. Rachel Zegler went from rising star to question mark.
And your scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood.
If I'm gonna stand there 18 hours for every hour that it is streamed online.
And now she's facing the biggest challenge of her career. Can she bounce back? Or did this movie close the chapter before it ever truly began? And while Rachel's still scrambling to recover, one thing is almost guaranteed. The animated roasts are coming. Because if you thought South Park went hard, just wait until The Simpsons and Family Guy take their turn.